Do you still need to record silence?
Yeah, I need a few moments.
Ah.
What should I say? Crumb dumpsters?
Crumb buckets is good.
Crumb
That's
buckets?
like a SpongeBob reference.
Crumb Pad Pros.
Okay, yeah. Hello, my little crumb buckets. Before we get into this very special episode of In My Crumble Opinion, I want to remind you to go ahead and like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, follow me on all social media platforms such as Instagram and YouTube, obviously, TikTok, Spotify now. She has layers. Was that good? I don't know. I always get so in my head. So if you haven't noticed, we did upgrade a little bit of our setup here. I wanted to call attention to kind of a new angle of Angel and Eris's living room. All of this is made possible by generous donations of my boyfriend and Angel. So if you want to be a generous donator yourself, you can definitely join our Patreon. If you haven't yet joined, there's a lot of really fun content on it. Recently, Obsidian and I got out of drag after our gig, after our Crumble episode, and that was super fun. I also have a full roast on it where I roast some local favorites like snacks and beef. Well, I said favorites, didn't I? Well, Snacks is roasted, so you can check that out too. It was for Beef's birthday. It's super fun, it's super lewd, and please don't screen cap and share it because I will get canceled. Okay. If you haven't yet noticed, pan out, wow, I have a shaker, a mover, a disruptor in Bay Area tech and drag, not necessarily in that order. Before we start with our conversation, would you lead us in a meditation?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Oh, great.
All right. I want everyone to take a few deep breaths in. Hold. Exhale. One more. Hold. Exhale. Now, I want you to think about your life. Think about every decision you've made up until this point. Think about everything that you're holding on to that you don't need to hold on to anymore. I want you to list them all out. And I want you to go online and to subscribe to the Patreon for In My Crumble Opinion. And as you give away that money, imagine yourself giving away all of those negative intentions that you don't want to hold on to and put them on Phoebe. Don't you feel better?
I think everyone in the room feels a lot lighter after that. Thank you so much.
Of course, happy to help.
Please give me all of your negative energies, viewers at home, in the form of money. Okay, so that was lovely. That was great. Reminds me of one of your digital drag numbers. We'll get to that digital drag era, but one of my favorite versions of Florida Man. Okay, so before anyone else has an opportunity to pathologize you, I want to give you the opportunity to do it yourself. What are your red flags, neurodivergencies, etc.?
My name is Florida Man, and my biggest red flag is I am born and raised in Miami. Florida Man actually is a reference to the all the news articles that came out, and the zombie face eater that was, I think, probably the most famous Florida Man article happened just 3 blocks away from the house I grew up in.
Bath salts.
Yeah, bath salts, exactly. Mm-hmm. And I still have police line tape from the scene of the crime. They took a little selfie there.
Oh, did you snip a little piece off for yourself and put it in your scrapbook?
Exactly. And then I was like, that's how I'm going to start doing drag. Yeah, and a lot of anxiety.
Oh, great. Lovely. Anxiety is very welcome in my social circles. It's the #1 driver of the show, actually. The show wouldn't happen without shitloads of anxiety. Thank you, anxiety. So this is not your first YouTube interview. I've actually stalked you and watched multiple of them.
Oh, no.
No, yeah. But why don't you, could you walk us through some of those experiences? Do you like being in YouTube video interviews?
I honestly, I don't even remember. I mean, I know I've been in a few, and I know I've talked about things before. I don't know. I'm pretty candid, and I'm a very open book. And so I know I've talked a lot about my anxiety and my addiction and how those have informed a lot of my drag moving forward. And I think that I'd be curious to actually go back and rewatch those now because it's been a few years. And so it's like I feel like I'm in a different headspace now than I was when I did those interviews.
I reacquainted myself with one of them yesterday. It was you in Disasterina. You're dressed like a pig.
That was
really fun. That was really cute.
Fun one.
And then there was another one with like some tween.
Jake Yonsei.
Yeah, Jake Yonsei. That's what it was. And I actually really love that because you really speak highly of Bay Area drag, and it showed me how articulate you are about your craft and how you like to approach doing the art of drag. So I want to channel some of that energy.
Sure, yeah,
really
I'm happy to.
That interview.
Yeah. I love to talk. My favorite subject is me.
So like I said, one of my favorite things about you is how you talk about drag. To me, it reads very art school. Where does all of that come from?
Art school.
Art school. Okay.
Yeah, no,
it
comes from art school. I mean, I was always like a really curious kid. I was a really high achiever academically when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like spelling bee champ, mathlete. I like did all of the like academic things, class president.
Oh my God. We have a lot in common. I was on Acadeca. I was class president and also ASB president.
Love
and
that.
Then, yeah.
Love a little nerd. We're the cerebral queens. And then I took AP art history when I was in high school. I went to an arts high school. And what I loved about art history...
That's a rich high school, I have to say, to have AP art history.
It's Miami's #1 public school it's Florida's #1 public school in the country.
Wow.
Or Florida.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Shut up. Whatever.
Well, you weren't in AP
exactly.
geography.
No. But what I liked about art history was I was more of a math kid growing up, and art was this thing that I couldn't like figure out, you know, like you can't solve art. And it like really puzzled me. And I don't know, that was the class that really got me interested in that. And then I went to art school beyond that. I didn't finish because I couldn't afford it, but like I really wanted to, you know, there was just something about like how much it escaped you, how much like figuring art escaped you, that made me really interested in it. So yeah, I like to approach everything through like a weird like critical lens. Yeah.
Right. So it's very obvious that some of that interest in art and background in art has informed your drag. I like to think of you as like an intersection of a drag monster, but also kind of a camp queen, but also very cerebral and brainy. Do you categorize yourself that way? How do you think of yourself, how you're perceived, but also how do you operate as a drag performer?
Yeah, I think I try not to think too much about that because I think that the more I can think so much about what I am, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's just how it's received. But I would say that the like absurdism is something that I like relate to a lot, which like definitely has overlaps in camp. It has overlaps in comedy. But like a lot of like absurdist philosophy, absurdist art, absurdist plays, that sort of stuff is where I draw a lot of inspiration from. And I think that I would like to think that comes through.
Great. So do you have drag influences or specific art influences that you would say are always present when you create a number or perform? Yeah,
I would say, I mean, at the end of the day, my favorite artist of all time forever is Felix Gonzalez Torres, who's like contemporary or artist of the 90s.
Google that person and tell me things about them so I sound smart when I bring them up later.
He's probably best known for his Piles of Candy, that artist in a gallery, and the famous one Untitled for Ross is the weight of his partner Ross, exactly the weight of him before he died of AIDS. And the audience is invited to go in and pick up the candy and slowly eat it until it's all gone. And the museum can slowly go and replenish it. And it's this like really simple conceptual piece, but it's also like deeply beautiful and moving. And you're like, it really bridges the like cerebral side of art, but also the like feeling side of art. And that is something that I always like try to carry with me in everything that I do is like, sure, like I can think about all the formal qualities of art and drag or whatever in whatever it is that I'm doing. But at the end of the day, I want it to amount to something. I don't want it to just be like something for the sake of doing it. So he's a big one. I like a lot of like I said, absurdism, Waiting for Godot, this like play where they're just sitting around waiting for somebody who never shows up, like is a big inspiration for me.
I could tell you're a reader. because you said Godot, and I believe it's pronounced Godot.
I have gone back and forth between that one. Like, so I used to say Godot, and then people said Godot, and then I was like, I don't actually know.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
It's Godot.
Godot.
There we go. Yeah, so I don't actually know.
Yeah. Let me hear the name of that first artist you mentioned one more time.
Felix Gonzalez Torres.
Torres.
Who unfortunately also died of AIDS in the 90s.
Oh, my God. Yeah. That installation reminds me of one of my favorite performance art pieces by Yoko Ono. Cut Piece, are you familiar with that?
Love Cut Piece, yeah, absolutely.
Where like people can come up and cut pieces of her wardrobe off.
Totally. A lot of those early like 60s through 90s like performance artists. I mean, that's what I was doing when I was in art school. I was doing a lot of performance art, a lot of conceptual art, a lot of like art that eventually like I came to the realization like it was an uphill battle for me, because in terms of like making a career as an artist, because there's no actual object that you're selling, and so you're relying a lot more on grant money and figuring out how to angle yourself in ways that I didn't come from a lot of money. Like I didn't grow up poor, but I definitely didn't grow up in a way where I could afford to be a broke artist for living, like subsidized as an art. So it was clear to me that I was like, oh yeah, the art world is still very much an art market. And then I developed this like immense resentment towards the art world at that point, and was like, I want to move as far away from like highbrow art as possible. Okay, and great.
And that so you would call drag lowbrow art or tech lowbrow art.
all of the above. I mean, I became obsessed with this idea that like a lot of the like social change that was happening with art in the early 1900s happened because of a very specific like moment, and that a lot of the like creative energy now, that a lot of the like ability to change the world wasn't actually happening in art anymore. It was happening in tech. And so part of me became really interested with the idea of like, what if I moved into tech with the mind of an artist and approached it that way? And that's sort of what led me there. And then similarly with drag was like, let me take this thing that is very much lowbrow in a like in the context of like art academia, especially less so now because it's being taken a lot more seriously now, but definitely when I was getting started, and like just really enjoy these things that you're not supposed to enjoy.
No, Obsidian and I talked about that last week. If you want to watch that episode, just go to the Crumble playlist on my profile. They brought that up as well, kind of like that dichotomy between high art and low art, because they're a instrumentalist, concert musician, contemporary concert musician.
Playing at Monument at the home I live in actually this weekend.
Oh my God.
By coincidence, yeah.
Wow. So definitely, like, we feel that as, and I come from the poetry world, and the idea of like poetry being high art. And I got an opportunity to speak at Stanford once, and one of the questions was just like, oh, how do you reconcile, doing this low art and also doing drag? And I'm just like, so like that conception still exists, you know? Even though it is somewhat being dismantled, and because I think academia is reckoning with
they're starting to realize too that there's actually a lot that is there. I mean, I have learned more from existing in these low art spaces from the people around me that I interact with, and the stories I hear, the intersections of people that I'm around, than I ever did in academia. It's all a very different kind of intelligence, and I think that to exist in nightlife takes a very specific flavor of intelligence that is just not necessarily the kind of intelligence that like wins capitalism, but that's not what we're trying to do.
No. So I'm gonna fangirl a little bit. This is a very big moment for me because I obviously look up to you a lot. When I first started drag, I feel like you're like in a very like upwards trajectory. You're like kind of at every single show I saw, and every pageant I went to, you were kind of like doing well in or had won. So to me, you are responsible to some of the most memorable kind of like drag performances that I could think of in the last like, I don't know, 20 years, because I've been going to drag shows for that long at least. Because I used to go to T-Shack a lot.
Rest in peace,
Heklina. And then I took a hiatus from going out to like drag shows because I had a drinking problem. But then when I reemerged and was interested in drag, I went out a lot, and you just did some of the most mind-blowing stuff to me, for me. What do you have a favorite performance, and do you get a sense of what I'm talking about?
First of all, thank you. I mean, that's like always really nice to hear, and I think I always had a deep respect for like the drag that came before me. I remember one of the first things I did when I started drag was I sat with one of my drag moms, Vivian Forevermore, and just had her like tell me the history of San Francisco drag through her eyes.
Yeah.
I asked her out for coffee, and I was just like, I want to know everything, you know. And I was like a student of drag before I was ever a drag queen, and I wanted to pay homage to that when I was doing that. And so, I would say I have a couple performances that stand out to me. I think like obviously, you know, Lady Voldemort was one that changed my life in many ways, but I think that the one that I did for Star Search, my caveman number, was I think the first time that I really felt like I was starting to figure out who I was as a performer. I think my Slenderman number was also a big one. The Miss Monster pageant number that I did, where I did the like a live green screen feed, I think showed like a lot of what I was hoping to try to do, and I think those are some ones that stand out to me. But I don't know. I really, I can still stand behind those numbers today.
Yeah.
Which is really
cool.
I
mean, I would have picked those lot too, you know, from the lot too. So we had Militia recently, and we had a cute little moment where she ran down all the crowns she won. And some of them that she lost, or one of them that she lost, and she alluded to you. And this, she very rudely alluded to you, but it was also very funny. That was the Star Search.
Mother Star Search, yeah.
Mother Star Search number. I remember watching that number and also thinking they shouldn't win because they're wearing flats. And that seems wrong to me to compete in flats. But it was...
They were caveman pajama slippers.
But now when I think about that pageant, your number is the only one I could really remember. So, tell us about putting that number together.
That one was wild. It was, it all came together so quickly. What I knew I wanted to do was, I have a certain framework for how I think about like building all my performances, and I have an acronym for it too.
Okay, please share.
It's CUNT.
Okay.
It is challenging. Of course I'm gonna forget it on the spot. Challenging. It's not unique. The T is timeless, and the N is nourishing.
Nourishing. Okay.
Yeah. And then the main point of that I want to do is I want it to be something that is like accessible. Okay. That anybody who's there like doesn't need to have like a fucking thesis to like understand what I'm doing, but that the people who want to like go a couple layers deeper have something that they can like chew on as well too.
Yeah.
But that it's like still very much like accessible to like a drunk audience.
Yeah.
And so I did I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. And I did it as like a caveman who just like has everything bad happening to them, and they're just trying to survive. They get attacked by they lose their partner to a dinosaur. They get attacked by their cavemen for the remaining arm of their partner, and then an asteroid comes and hits them, and it just like everything goes wrong, and like it was just such a fun number to put together.
Yeah, I think it really I think to the audience really brought home the idea that drag doesn't happen, just behind the proscenium, that, you can be kind of implicated in the fantasy.
Yeah, bring it out into the audience, like site specific, like, play with the venues that you have there. That was one of the things I really loved about the Stud, was the Stud had that little back porch, and you could set up your little podiums and pedestals all over the place. And so you could really just do these numbers in the round and do these things that, like, I don't know, like you couldn't do anywhere else. And I love the idea of like having the audience constantly going like, what's happening next? And just seeing their faces of just like, I didn't think this was possible.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I love.
Yeah, that's great. Do you see yourself competing again in the future in any sort of pageant?
I wouldn't say no, it just have to be the right circumstances. I really like, competition, it's such a corny thing, but like the person who you're competing against with is yourself.
Yeah.
And I like what it brings out in you to be like, to push yourself that extra mile, to be like, I didn't think I could do this.
Do you think you could beat Militia again?
We'll see. I don't know.
I don't think.
Militia's
you gotta
incredible.
audition for Queen of the Universe All Stars.
I have the voice of a dying toad, so.
Okay, we're going to take another short break. And then when we come back, we're just going to go deeper into this Florida swamp water.
We'll love to go deep.
Yeah. Welcome back. Hopefully, we just came back from a commercial of Shiksa's podcast. If we didn't, that's because Shiksa still hasn't sent us a commercial. So,
Shiksa.
Speaking of Shiksa, if you go to my Patreon, you can see me roast beef because I'm a great roaster, but I was not invited to roast Shiksa. Surprisingly, strange, weird. Everyone's confused about it. But you were. Are you excited for the roast of Shiksa, the one and only Shiksa?
The one and only Shiksa. Very excited. I'm actually wearing one of her creations right now.
Yeah. You're not the only person in the room that was invited to roast Shiksa. And it wasn't me. Are you excited, Angel?
I was going to say, Florida said they're wearing one of Shiksa's creations. So I was going to say, oh, she's already started roasting.
Yeah. Don't steal my material.
Oh.
This one's in the roast too. I'm having to hold back to like not do my angel roasts
It's
right
gonna be
now.
It's going to be fun. I'm excited, especially for you two, because I feel like you two are going to bring the things that are really going to make me laugh.
Let's get this method cooking.
So enough about things that I'm not involved in. Actually, more about what I'm not involved in. So you alluded to your Lady Voldemort number.
I did.
It was kind of a moment that went viral, that catapulted you into a queer drag household name.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, that was wild. It was like single-handedly like the most absurd thing to have ever happened to me. Might be the most absurd thing to ever happen to me.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a pretty hard one to top.
Yeah.
But like it was, in many ways it was like every drag queen's dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, you know, you do a performance, you post it on your social media, and you wake up the next day to like millions and millions of views and to like interview requests from like a bunch of different publications and gigs literally all over the world for this month.
Yeah.
And
bring it a little back.
Yeah.
Like, tell us about putting that number together.
Yeah.
Were you excited about it? Did you think like this is going to be my breakthrough number?
You know, it's interesting. So I had actually done the character Lady Voldemort once before at my party called Beautiful.
Yeah.
And like part of that was like as a joke because
Yeah.
we had struggled with attendance at Beautiful. Like we knew we had a fun party going, but nobody
Yeah.
would come. So we're like, let's just do
I was there to that low attended
yeah, that's right.
like, premiere of Lady Voldemort.
You were in one of them, right?
Yeah.
You were in the...
No, you were gonna invite me to be in a Club Beautiful, but then you relapsed.
Then I relapsed?
So I was never booked for it. That's okay.
But then I did... so we did a Harry Potter night because we're like, we want to do the like... We want to do a sellout theme. Like let's just like do something that like, you know, we're selling out.
Yeah.
And then the character was just so funny to do Voldemort. I did... Someone left the cake on the rain. MacArthur Park.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to bring Voldemort back for something. And then when Ariana Grande night came up, I was like, oh, wouldn't that be funny if I did that? And I just kind of thought like that. Like, wouldn't it be funny if? You know, like, why not? And I knew it was going to be a good number. Like, there's like, you know, everything kind of aligned. But it was cunt. It was your acronym. Yeah, exactly.
It was accessible.
It was nourishing. It was
nourishing.
timeless.
Yeah, because J.K. Rowling's timeless.
Wait, is the accessible So is it Kant? Is it like K?
Kant, K-A-N-T, yeah.
Nourishing.
It's nourishing. Oh my god. But I definitely didn't, like, in hindsight it makes sense, right? In hindsight, like, I've traced back the steps and I can see why it had the reaction it did. Like, the intersection of Ariana Grande fans, Harry Potter millennials, and drag queens, like, is just like this, like, weird critical mass of, like, insane people.
And, also burlesque. And pyrotechnics.
Yeah, it played to a lot of different things. And then I was also, at the time, right, Instagram at the time was where most drag queens were sharing their things. And it was the age of, like, the makeup influencer. And that's not what I did. And so I had to find a different way to present what I was doing. So I would take these, like, I would, like, position people at different places in the bar and, like, film these, like, edited together clips because I wanted to show off what it was that I do, which was storytelling.
Yeah.
And I just so happened to, like, catch all the right angles of this and posted it online, and it just, like, took off. And I think one of the things that a lot of people, like, don't know about that was that I had actually just a few days before announced that I was moving back to Florida to try to get sober because I was struggling with meth at the time. And so, like, this happened, like, I literally was like, I'm struggling with addiction right now, and I need to go home and get my life back together.
Yeah.
And then a week later was, like, shot into the public eye while I'm still dealing with addiction actively. And it was one of the most, like, overwhelming things to have to juggle of being like, I don't want to fuck this up.
Yeah. Because
all eyes are on me right now. I was putting an immense amount of pressure on myself. I also was dealing with the sense of not guilt, but, like, this feeling of, like, why me? Yeah. I had so much love and respect for the drag scene in the Bay Area, and I was this, like, newcomer at the time who was suddenly just, like, being shot into something. And I was like, why me? Why not all of my, like, other friends? And I wanted to share the experience with them, but it was also this deeply, like, isolating experience. Yeah. Because suddenly I had people who I couldn't trust anybody anymore because there were people who had never given me the time of day who were suddenly wanting things from me. And then I had people who I thought were very close with me who were then dealing with their feelings of jealousy and not being direct with me. And I just didn't know who to listen to anymore. Yeah. I didn't know how to navigate. Suddenly I had to deal with contracts. I had to deal with planning my itineraries in ways that were, like, really complicated and in ways that is scary and no one teaches you how to do. And I think a lot of people focus on, and it's one of those things that you can't really complain about in the moment because you're also just insanely grateful. This is really cool that this is happening, but it's also terrifying, overwhelming, and I'm, like, actively dealing with a meth addiction at the same time. And it was like a very overwhelming experience, and I've learned so much about myself, and I'm still learning so much about myself because of those couple months.
No, I mean, I could imagine that if you're feeling isolated by the circumstances, but then also kind of, like, feeling like you are isolated, it seems like, overwhelming and lonely.
Yeah, and that's not to say it wasn't, like, the coolest thing ever. I got to go on these, like, I was a Rue girl for a month basically. I was on these tours, like, with, like, like, I filled in for Jinx Monsoon, and it was like,
oh wow, the audience is lost.
I know, for real. Like, on a tour bus going through, all the UK, and, like, it was just, like, it was really cool, and it gave me a glimpse of, like, this could be your life, because I was aware of the fact that I was the novelty 15 minutes of fame act along the way, and it wasn't what I did then, but it was what I did after then that like would determine a lot. And what I learned during that experience was that, like, hey, like, if I'm gonna be able to enjoy this, I need to organize a lot of things here first. And that started sort of like a series of years coupled with a lot of other events that happened along the way that led me to focus more on, like, my inwards journey so that I could enjoy the fruits of, like, what I was doing. Because in many ways I have since learned, it went viral because there is something there that is special about me. There is something that is worth sharing. And if I can, like, cultivate that in a way that also doesn't break me apart from the inside, like, that's totally worth celebrating. And, like, I don't need to be ashamed of that. So I don't know, it was a really cool experience. I'm so glad it happened, and I'm so glad it's over.
Do you wake up in night sweats?
Oh, absolutely.
Like grabbing your hair? Like, is it?
Yeah, I go.
Still? You seem to have a very close connection to, I mean, from the outside looking in, to the Dragula franchise. Yeah. A lot of the contestants you're friends with, and then also, I think, did you compete in something that they did?
Yeah, I did the Dragula World pageant, which was this, like, it was their live show that they used to do was Dragula, and then they did the pageants twice. And when I did the pageant, it was after season 2 had aired down in LA, and me, Astrid, and Mystery Meat were the top 3 for that one.
Oh, wow.
And Astrid and I had been following each other for some time at that point, like on social media. So we'd like been acquainted with each other, but we met for the first time there. And she ended up winning. And we like made out during the final lip sync, and she shoved me onto the ground, and we became immediate friends at that point.
Aww.
Yeah. And we've been like basically inseparable since. We FaceTime almost every day. And we like the first time I ever got flown out for a gig was at her party. The first time she got flown out for a gig was at my party. Like it was actually that same Club Beautiful that did Voldemort for the first time.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, I helped her every step of the way, helped her get ready for both of her seasons on Dragula, and we have a very close friendship. And, you know, and then just the nature of like the kind of drag that I was doing, I got close with a lot of, you know, Bitch Puddin's a good friend of mine, you know, and a lot of the LA girls we just formed a natural like sense of mutual respect, I guess, in what we were doing.
You had been rumored on a cast, at least, like, you know, those like little slideshows, the Miss Mojo slideshows. I don't know.
I was down in Miami recently, and someone I met was like, "How does it feel to be on one of those now?" And I'm like, "They're still putting me on those goddamn lists." Like, what? I've done drag twice in the last year.
Since you brought up Astrid, is that love triangle that was so prominently featured on this last season? Was that real?
No comment.
Okay, no comment. We're never gonna know. Let's just cancel doing this show. I don't know why I bring people out.
That's not my tea to spill. So,
yeah. So you shot a porno with Princess Pinocha as Lady V. What was that experience like?
Oh my god. So after the viral video stuff had settled down, I'd taken a brief break from drag to get sober, and then came back to the Bay, and I got reached out to do Britain's Got Talent. And Simon Cowell gave me a yes, which was like dream accomplished. Like, like when I was in college, all my writing
That's the only yes that matters.
That's the only yes that matters. Because I spent a lot of my time in school arguing that reality television was the highest form of art. That it's like the modern like Greek, Roman Colosseum of our day. That like, you know,
it's the Hunger Games.
Yeah, it doesn't matter like what the highbrow art is. People are going to be studying these reality show competitions as a way of understanding what our culture and society look like these days, and so it's worth approaching with a critical lens. And so I always wanted to know how like the machine works, how it was made, and so getting on Britain's Got Talent in many ways was like that was the drag show I wanted to get onto, and it was a comedy of errors, and ultimately my episode never saw the light of day.
Ooh.
A combination of a lot of things. I think ultimately they just didn't have a storyline that they wanted to push for me.
Okay. So like addiction and...
No, they wanted gay is okay. And I was coming in there giving them like queer theory of J.K. Rowling's like books, and like they're like
you're like I'm gonna do my snatch game's gonna be Judith Butler.
Exactly. And to the point where even right before I went out on stage, they had a PA run up to me and said, you know, Simon Cowell's son loves like cosplay characters and sci-fi, but when the characters speak, it ruins the illusion for them. So can you just respond with physical humor instead of actually speaking to the judges? And in that moment, I knew, it's because they don't want me to say anything that might jeopardize whatever storyline. But this is the machinery
that you were
and it was so cool. I was just like, yeah, of course I'm not going to say anything. And I knew in that moment that meant that I wasn't going to make it through. Like I knew already, but I was just having so much fun. And I forgot the question.
No, I mean, like, I forgot the question. I was asking about you fucking Pinocha.
Oh my god! Yeah, I love a tangent. And so when that didn't happen, when they gave me the call that was like, "Hey, your episode's probably not going to air," the pandemic had just like started at that point.
Yeah.
And my life was like at that point, it felt like everything it felt like I was hitting this like upward crescendo of like, okay, my life was kind of together, and I was about to be on Britain's Got Talent. I had just been announced to be on another one of the Heels of Hell tours. It was gonna be like a 7-country European tour, and
name 7 European countries. Go.
South Africa, Osaka.
Oh no, sorry. Go on. Yeah.
And then to get I felt like my career was sort of riding on this. Mm-hmm. And then the pandemic got announced, and then I also got told that my episode wasn't going to air, and then I got dropped from the tour. And everything just sort of like hit. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was exhausted. I had like worked so hard to just sort of like build up to this moment, and I was putting so much pressure on myself, and was like, you know what? I'm going to do something for myself. And and I hit up Princess Pinocha, and I was like, let's film a porno, and we're going to sell it on OnlyFans. And that's how we're going to make money during the pandemic. And and we filmed it the night that the shelter-in-place orders were announced at midnight. Went over to, it was Mary, Cash, and Clark, who were all living together at the time. Mary and Cash filmed it. And we put out the porn a few days later, or a few weeks later. And
how much did you make from it?
I actually don't know, because we ended up donating all of the funds. We ended up not using it to make money. And so I couldn't tell you. But
you donated to J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, we donated to J.K. Rowling. People were really coming for her online. We were like, she needs the help.
No, I mean, I've seen the production stills. I think we have access to some of the videos too. We were gonna put on we were gonna put it on our Patreon, but apparently Patreon doesn't like that.
Princess Pinocha talked about this on our episode and was like, "Yes, you can totally put this on your Patreon."
You tried.
We then found out that is like one of Patreon's like number
the
one
biggest thing though.
Knows.
Well, we give him like a password or something. Yeah, I'm down to share. I don't care. I mean, I'm fully clothed, so it doesn't really.
We need to have a viewing, a Crumble exclusive viewing.
A double feature of that and Tar. I was so Tar! Am I not the Lydia Tar of drag?
You are the Lydia Tar of drag. Problematic. Oh yeah,
I was screaming the whole episode.
That's a really good double feature. Actually, that sounds healing.
Oh my God. The porno is like the Pixar cold.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a little lamp jumping around before.
It's like the first 7 minutes of Up or something.
Oh,
it makes you cry.
Yeah. There's I think Clark might have said it too, but she couldn't keep it up because I'm blowing her is Voldemort, and so there's like an iPhone on my back that's like playing porn the whole time.
Honestly, sometimes you need an iPhone playing porn to perform. We want to see how this machine works.
We want to see how the machine works,
exactly. Okay, last question of this segment. You did mention Vivi as being your drag mom. You have an extended drag family. Who's in your drag family?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a village for me. Like that's for sure. I'm like famously scattered, and I think I have 4 people who I call my drag parents, and they've all filled like different roles in my life. Mary, Vice, and Cash Monet are like my OG 2 parents, and like they're the ones who sort of like introduced me to people, and they're more like my real human parents. I lived with them, and they like taught me how to be an adult. I was a mess when I lived with them. Wow. So I owe a lot to them. Then Vivi and I started working on Clip Beautiful together, and Vivi was somebody who I like had a lot of deep respect for, like how she conceptually approached drag, and so she taught me a lot.
You two are very similar.
Yeah,
in that way. Yeah.
She taught me a lot about how to throw a party, how to like work an audience, and how to like structure a number. So like thinking through a lot of the formal qualities of drag I got through Vivi. And then Boy Young is like my drag mom in the more like classic sense of a drag mom, where like we'll paint together, we'll bounce ideas off of each other. A lot of my clothes is like hand-me-downs from her, and like we have a lot of similar interests in like art and culture that I think like bring us together in terms of just like being friends. So yeah, those are my drag parents.
Do you have drag children? Once upon a time, Holly, my baby now, was your baby once, but you also once adopted Tara Bull. Can you walk us through Holly and that terrible mistake?
Yeah, drag CPS was called on me, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, similar to my drag moms, like having drag children has also been like a thing that like has been my relationship with it has evolved over like the years too, and so like
Yeah.
I guess there's 4 people who've like I call my drag children or call me drag mom or something like that, and it's always been different. The first was Syzygy, and that was me, Nikki, and Rock. I think are all Syzygy's parents, Rock and Sakura.
Yeah,
and that was largely because Syzygy was the winner of the first Turbo Pageant cycle, and so there was this just like sense.
I also saw Syzygy's debut was at Club Beautiful.
It was also at Club Beautiful, yeah. And so there was this sense of like, oh, cool. Like I'm not actually doing anything at all for you, but there's just this like sense of like kinship that we had with each other. And so like I take no credit for anything of Syzygy's, but like, you know, that was one.
You shouldn't.
Then there is Holly, and Holly was working as our stage kitten for Turbo Pageant, and did such an incredible job of keeping us organized. She understood how me and Nikki's brains were both scattered, and really like that Turbo Pageant wouldn't be what it was without the immense help that Holly Graphics brought to that, both online and in person. So. And like again, same like creatively, like there's not much that I've done to help her with any of her drag, but I'm just kind of like there is a sounding board if she ever wants to talk, you know, and I'm really glad that, you know, she's in House of Cakes now because there's that sort of like community family thing. I'm not very hands-on by any means, so it's been really great to see that relationship blossom. And then Terrible, right before the pandemic, I asked her to be my daughter, and that was sort of like one that like unfortunately like circumstances got in the way. You know, like the pandemic happened, and so we both kind of had to move on with our lives, and in a way that like drag was no longer sort of front and center for either of us. So, you know, like there was not much in terms of drag that we were able to sort of develop there. But
Terrible, come out. Come say hi to your mommy. No.
Oh my god. And then more recently Hands is actually yeah.
Oh, Hands. Oh my god. Hands is wow, what a up and comer. I keep saying up and comer. What's another phrase for that?
Rising
Star. Yeah.
I love Hands dearly. They're somebody who is like equally, if not more, of a monster when it comes to like being opinionated, has a mouth on them. Also comes from like a contemporary dance background, so also has like a much more like theory background.
Oh, that's very obvious. Oh my gosh, their kinesthetic awareness.
But they do have these very sort of big, sort of awe-inspiring numbers.
Totally.
Oh, reminiscent of like what I feel like you've done as well. So I see kind of an imprint of your legacy.
Well, and that's how we started hanging out more. I actually posted a video of some of the old drag numbers I had done where I had this giant butthole on stage, and Hands messaged me and was like, oh, I'm actually doing a similar concept for something I have coming up. And we started talking about that, and I started helping him with that, like the ideas behind that number, and like it just became like more clear that like we had a lot in common just with how we thought about drag. And so that's been like a really fun one too.
I'm a big fan of Hands.
Totally. I am
too.
Hands. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we're going to take another short break, and we're going to continue our discussion of all of the shows that you've done.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. It's serious. We need to talk about Lana Del Rey. The Lana Files is an investigative, semi-investigative podcast created by me, Dion, a drag performer, wig stylist, and self-professed Lana Del Rey aficionado, lover, hater, adversary. We have a complicated relationship, as I'm sure many of you do. So, I have set out with this podcast to answer the question, what the hell is her deal? So tune in every week to the Lana Files to learn more about the woman who reinvented not only Americana, but calling somebody daddy. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts, except for Amazon, period.
Welcome back. Hopefully you got another commercial, maybe the Oaklash commercial. What commercials are we putting on here? If you have a commercial and you want to see it on In My Crumble Opinion, you could get it on our platform for $20 is the going rate, I think.
$21.
$21,000. You can put a commercial on here. Big Milk. We're getting Aubrey Plaza to do a milk commercial for us. That's really exciting. Have you seen? No.
Oh.
But did you hear about Aubrey Plaza having a milk commercial?
I pay attention to nothing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait, yes, this is about drinking wood chips or something like that. Yeah, I did see that.
She did a parody commercial about
I clicked on the website to be like, is this real?
Yeah, but it's all big milk. They're trying to get back oat milk consumers to go back to dairy milk.
Oh gosh, no! I'm back in almond territory these days.
Almond. Oh, interesting.
It's like just like sweet and nutty.
But it has like the worst body. You know,
okay.
Oat milk's good. Speaking of which,
yes, Phoebe.
Okay, well, enough about nut milk. Oat milk, nut milk. So we talked about Club Beautiful a lot.
Yeah.
You produced that with Vivi. And that
Jeff
was...
and Chris. It was a team effort, yeah.
And that was all at... that was just at Elbow Room?
Was it the Elbow Room in SF before they closed down, yeah.
Yeah. How was producing that show? Was that your first show, or...?
That was the first show. I joined in, actually, they started it before me, and I just kind of, like, jumped in and was like, I have opinions, and just was like a monster, and they all hated working with me, but it was, like, my first go-around of just, like, learning how to, like, structure a show, and learning what I liked out of drag, which was, like, absurdity, and doing these weird themes.
Yeah, some of the themes were, like...
Baguette!
Yeah, was that a theme?
One of the themes was baguette, and then one was... who is Christina? Like that was the whole theme. And one was waiting room, and like it was just like, sure, do whatever you want. Like, figure it out.
That's great.
Whatever.
Oh, I love proms. People hate theme shows, but I hate having the shackles of like a theme.
Totally.
I feel like my creativity actually comes alive if I have some sort of parameter.
I completely agree. Like, if there's no parameter, I get lost, and I can just do anything. And again, which is what I liked about the competition format, was that like, there's some parameters here to work with.
Yeah, totally. So, so speaking of competition, one of your other shows is Turbo Pageant. I regard Turbo Pageant, and I've said this, I've had this rant on the show before. I regard Turbo Pageant as one of the formative drag spaces in the Bay Area, much like Heckliness T-Shack. Just so much of what happened there informs, how we proceed in drag or participate in drag in the Bay Area. And likewise, I feel like Turbo Pageant was really just like a magnet and cyclometer. What cyclotron. That's what I was talking about.
You little cyclotron.
A cyclotron, mashes atoms together, explodes atoms.
I didn't finish college.
No one's helping me here. We all went to Berkeley.
I dropped out of art school.
A large hadron collider.
Hadron collider. What I mean is just like so many kind of like disparate avenues or neighborhoods of drag kind of like convened here and coalesced and really pushed each other, and I feel like people learned from each other during Turbo Pageant. What was your vision for Turbo Pageant? It
was a really special energy, wasn't it? Like, thank you, like, for saying that. Like, and I feel that too, and it's in many ways like it wasn't just me. It was everybody who was involved, who competed, who participated, that gave it that special energy. Yeah. Me and Nikki were just sort of there, just like making sure the fire didn't go out, just like putting a little brick here or a little twig here, a little twig there to keep the flame going. And but the original idea for it happened actually while I was touring with Lady V, and I got like the pleasure of getting to see different cities and how they approach drag, and learned that like, actually like the conversations we have about what's important and not important with drag in the Bay Area are different from the ones that are happening in Orlando, or different from the ones happening in Boston, or different from the ones happening in Chicago. And we only get a limited window of that on Twitter. And so actually getting firsthand on the ground experience, seeing those scenes, I got a sense of like what were some of the things that made certain scenes feel more alive and vibrant or healthier than others. And there were two things that really stood out to me. One was having sort of like this big sort of culminating platform of getting to show off their the fruits of what they've worked on. And the other one was having like a really good sort of like onboarding new talent competition type thing. And one that specifically didn't like break the bank for people, because that was one of the things I heard, was that they can get very expensive as they become like 10-week things with detailed prompts and but I also wanted to still feel fun and creative, like you were pushing yourself, and just to get people in front of other people's eyes. Yeah. And also, while I was working full time as a drag queen in the Bay, I was working not just in Soma, I was working in Castro, I was working in the East Bay, I was working in like lots of different scenes, and I was like, oh my god, like all these different scenes like feel like they're like not getting booked at these other venues over like these stupid like things that didn't really exist.
Yeah.
And I was like, we just need to get everybody in one room together.
Yeah.
And so I took like all the best parts of like competitions from other cities and sort of like mashed them all up and took out all the worst parts. I pitched it to Nikki and she was on board. And we did that first cycle, and it was like really clear that we had something really fun. There are people who I had never seen perform. She's Out of Control.
Mm-hmm.
I had never known, like, and was just sort of this like crazy talent and just seeing what everybody brought. Vera, that was the first time I ever saw Vera perform. And we kept that going for a few cycles, and it lived online as well too. Like it really kept going deep into the pandemic, and it was just this really fun burst of energy that I really loved and treasured deeply. It's I think one of my proudest like things that I got to be a part of in drag.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a kind of springboard for a lot of us in the House of Cakes as well.
It also wasn't ever a like that's the one thing that I do want to say. We did get some flack for like why competitions, this and that. Like it was never about it being a competition.
Yeah,
the competition was this sort of like Trojan horse for everything else that it was, which was about getting everyone into one room, and the competition format so that people push themselves and also so we can get people in the door and give them money.
Exactly.
And it was always more about just like celebrating what everybody else offered, and the fact that like today there's so many relationships that I see in the drag world that I knew were formed at Turbo Pageant, whether in the audience or backstage, and like I'm so grateful that I got to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Well, I earned the rather ignominious label of being the only House of Cakes member to compete in Turbo Pageant and not make it past the first round. So
good job, baby. I will say that I feel like in Cakes fashion, you should have gone through and you didn't go through. So yeah, there you go.
The Cakes have lots of opinions.
Angel, do your Florida man impression.
Oh my god, please. Yes.
I just think it's really interesting how we take these ideas about art and apply them to drag, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I'll save it for the roast.
I was also in my sober era during that whole time, so I was truly unhinged.
Yeah. Well, one thing that our takeaways from going to the live Turbo Pageants was you and Nikki just seemed like, oh, they should be judging us because like y'all came into it and we're always like on fire. Like
we had really good chemistry.
You had good chemistry, but also the numbers you would do were just like it was fun. It was a fun time. Do you want to talk about your experience, kind of sublimating or transforming the magic of Turbo Pageant live to Turbo Pageant digital? Because I actually feel like digital
worked really well
to do what you were doing.
Yeah,
what was happening at the stud,
and if anything too, it also gave us like
Sally
access.
Limone.
Yeah, no, and it also gave us like access to performers outside of the Bay.
Yeah,
that's actually so Shiksa. We met because when I was asking on Twitter, hey, like what works and doesn't work about drag competition in your city, Shiksa actually like replied to that and gave me some feedback that helped shape how we designed the original Turbo Pageant. And then we brought it online. Shiksa competed in that one. That's how she met a lot of the performers in the Bay. She ended up coming and stay with me when she came out for Oaklash.
Yeah.
And fell in love with the Bay. And so like, like Shiksa is in the Bay largely because of Turbo Pageant.
Yeah,
so
I agree. I mean, a lot of the drag performers I have relationships with outside of the Bay Area or because we were in the same cycle together.
It was awesome. Yeah. And we really like we had fun with like I mean my favorite cycle will always be the revenge cycle with that stupid Kill Bill theme and all those little like promo trailers that we made for them and like the little air horns and just dressing up along with it. Like we had just as much fun with that show as the performers did, and it was always like what are we gonna do next for this too? And it was just fun. I really loved doing that.
I actually feel your authentic kind of affection for this show, and it makes me feel good because we feel that way about this show, and I feel like we wouldn't have. I
mean, the cakes were a big part. If there wasn't a cakes in a cycle, I was like, who's gonna roast me afterwards?
Yeah, we hated you. Okay, so elephant in the room. You also helped bring Princess
Yes.
into the world, which is, I think, unarguably kind of like the biggest drag party in the Bay Area right now.
Yeah, it is.
How did that becoming a thing
Sure.
happen?
So it was similar. So we started, actually, Princess and Turbo Pageant started Wednesday and Friday of the same week. And it was sort of that like two-pronged thing of like, we need an onboarding thing for like new talent to sort of like grow, get to know each other and that sort of thing. And then this sort of like larger platform to showcase sort of like the cream of the crop, the best of the best. But again, showcasing lots of different pockets of drag, not just one scene. And, Tito and I were very good friends, and I was moving back to the Bay, and we'd been talking about wanting to do a party together, and that's how, and Princess ended up being that party. And we ran that for a few months in person before the pandemic hit. And, and it was clear that we had different visions for where we wanted to take the party, and we didn't necessarily work well together. And that's okay, like some people don't. But it fell apart.
Yeah.
and he kept it going after I left with Lisa and Cochina, and it's cool to see what it has turned into now, which is very much not the vision I would have had for it, but is also very much, I know, the vision that he did have for it. And so to know that he actually actualized that is really cool to see.
Yeah.
And like, there is a sense of like pride, even if it didn't end on the best of terms, of just sort of like knowing that I had some small hand in that. So, yeah.
That's great.
No.
I don't have to have a wild imagination to maybe think that, is there any sort of, you must have had to gone through a lot of processing.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like, I'm like, I have been thinking a lot about how to talk about this, and like, I'm even weirdly getting emotional now about it too. Yeah. Like, and it felt very much like a breakup, like just like any, like a relationship breakup. And like during a relationship breakup that was really nasty, and like both of us said very hurtful things to each other and didn't want to speak to each other, and like I lost a friend in that process too, and that sucked. And then it was doubly hard, right? Like there's that aspect of it, but like there's also just the side of like the party kept going. Yeah. And I had asked for it to not. And that was actually one of the big points of contention. And because I knew I was gonna have to look at it all the time. And that really sucked, especially because I had lost access to the Stud, which was like one of my favorite places to perform. And now I had sort of, especially when I moved to Oasis, I felt like I had lost every stage that I ever wanted to perform on. And I lost my drive to want to do drag. I felt, I don't know. It's a lot of these things really forced me to take a step back and be like, what is it that I want out of not just drag, but like out of my life and out of friendships and relationships with people? Like, I wasn't happy with how things broke down there. And I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of like working on sort of like myself and reprioritizing things. And that's a large part of why I haven't done as much drag lately, is because I've been wanting to do it on my own terms, and also just like dealing with the fact that like, yeah, it does feel like is there still a place for me in drag out here? And it felt like, like during a messy divorce where he got the kids, the house, the money, everything in the divorce. And I was just sort of sitting there just left trying to figure out like, what do I do next? Yeah. And I don't know. It's also what happened between us happened between us. It's not anybody's business, but I can only talk about my feelings afterwards and how it affected me, which was like, I lost a group of friends because suddenly now people can't be with us in the same room, and like, I don't have a gig to offer them. So like it became this thing of like,
there's a power dynamic.
Yeah. And it became really challenging and complicated and messy, and complicated is the big thing. Yeah. And it's not a matter of like anyone being at fault as much as it is like, I want this to be over just as much as anybody else does. It's uncomfortable that I'm talking on a podcast about, you know what I mean? It's like, it's an uncomfortable situation. And I want nothing more for it to be over.
It's uncomfortable to witness.
Yeah.
And it's also, you know, as a spectator and someone that's outside of, you know, the interpersonal kind of conflict of, you know, of the situation of Princess, I personally mourn you not participating in drag in, you know, a full-hearted way. Do you feel like part of that is compartmentalization? Is drag painful for you?
Yeah, it was for a long time. I couldn't even go to a drag show for a while without feeling this sense of like... Funny, I went to go see Tyra Sanchez recently.
Yeah.
And like... Tyra Sanchez is also somebody who has a very complicated relationship with drag because of like her fallout with Drag Race. And she talked about, it was this tiny little show at the Parkside. There were like 20 people there, and it was the best show of my life. And she talked about, someone's like, would you ever go back for All Stars? And she's like, why would I ever go back to my abuser, drag abuse? You know, like,
yeah.
And in many ways, like, you know, she felt like this traumatic relationship with drag. And that's sort of what I realized I had. I had a very like, I had no sense of boundaries when it came to my drag. I threw myself completely into drag, built my entire sense of identity around drag. And I needed to reassess that, and I needed to learn what are the things about me that are like really special and wonderful that I can bring to drag, and what are the things that I can like leave behind. Yeah. And so now when I do drag, I want it to always be bringing the best parts of myself, and to like, I think when people say that drag queens, drag performers have this platform and like are leaders in our community, it's not about the things they say, but it's about what they do. Yeah. And I want to like lead with intention, and it not necessarily being about people always agreeing with my opinions, but rather that I like stand by the things that I do say, and that I stand behind the actions that I do take. And I couldn't necessarily say that about myself 3 years ago. And I do feel I can say that about myself now. And if that means doing drag less frequently, then it means doing drag less frequently.
That is one thing that I find very inspiring about you, because I already looked up to you as a, you know, creative, but also your sense of kind of like boundary and self-reflection. Every time you've stepped away from drag, because you've done it multiple times,
sure, yeah,
you've come back with a very clear intention, and in some ways like improved, you know. I mean, you know,
thank you.
And so I'm excited to see what you do and what you don't do.
Me too. I don't know. I have no idea what's happening.
Is there anything that you feel like you want to say that someone's watching that might hear it, that they wouldn't have an opportunity of hearing it otherwise, you know? Because
I mean, no, because I mean, yes and no, sure. Like, are there many things I would love to say? Sure, but that's also like between us. Yeah. And but I guess like as just a broader sense, I would say that like so often we in drag, we build so much of a sense of who we are around like how people are perceiving us and the validation that we're getting, whether or not we're getting booked, whether or not we're succeeding, comparing ourselves professionally to our own friends, which is this very like weird dynamic. And like, I guess I would just like encourage everybody to be like kinder and gentler with each other, and understand that like it's interesting. I was talking to somebody recently about how like, what was a professional NBA player doing before they played basketball? And chances are it was playing basketball. Yeah. You know, like the route to being a professional basketball player is play basketball. Yeah. But with drag, there's like so many different routes that people take. You know, you came from a writing background. I came from an arts background. People come from dancing backgrounds, musical theater, makeup. And we all like are this weird like mishmash of like different senses of values, and what do we value versus what do they value. And so the things that I might find important, right, like I love to like over intellectualize drag and comedy and this and that, might not be the thing that somebody who's just wanting to find a sense of community finds. And we have to like understand that about each other moving forward, is that like what we all value is different. And just because somebody disagrees with you doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's right or wrong. It just means that they value different things. And I think the more time we can take to really get to know each other and not compare ourselves, because we all come from different backgrounds and we all have very different things that motivate us, I think we can create a healthier scene. And I that's what I want to do is just whatever I do, make sure that it's contributing to a healthy nightlife scene, because like these are the people who got me through some of the darkest times of my life. And like, I am so grateful for all the friends and connections that I've made. I'm really grateful for, you know, for you and this podcast, and for all, like, it's so cool getting to see like House of Cakes. I was here painting earlier, and like you were all doing this like craft night together, and it's just like awesome to see. I'm like, this is what like makes me want to still be in drag in the queer community.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, you were a big part of me wanting to do drag, so it's I feel validated in some way, being able to reciprocate that kind of like magnetic energy. So is there a show that you would want to do? I mean, you talked about having a different vision for Princess, or maybe that's evolved, or maybe there's something else that you want to do. Is there a show in you?
Yeah, I think there is at some point, and I've thought about a couple different things. I've been joking about doing a Got Talent spinoff show,
Okay.
kind of in the spirit, especially because Turbo Pageant would evolve into, and I was on the Got Talent show. It would be San Francisco's Got Talent ? But less drag centric and more just like entertain us.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. Me and Adam have been talking about wanting to do something called just like whatever. We'll just do whatever.
Great.
Whatever.
Well,
Shut up.
you should do it. And finally book me, because you owe me a booking.
Look inwards.
Yeah, look inward. We're going to take one last little break, and we'll come back with our last remarks. Thank you.
How many
This
times
is
am
gonna
I
be
gonna
fun.
cross this out?
This is going to be so fun. This is a good time, everyone.
Speaking of good times, welcome to Queers on Dice.
It's a fucking dragon. I'm sorry, Captain. Was that a below job or blow job?
We're gay. Do you get it? Did you figure that out yet?
Gay.
Welcome back.
Hi.
I'm here. I'm here with Florida man. Woman. Florida Elizabeth Woman.
Whoa.
I've had such a wonderful
This is
time
so
with
much
you.
fun.
This has been a lot of fun.
We laughed, we cried.
We laughed and cried. We got a little misty-eyed. You're definitely invited to do this whenever you want, so long as Angel says yes, because I actually do
Once the
none of
restraining
bookings
order is
here.
lifted.
Yeah, once the restraining order is lifted, because your ankle bracelet does not permit you to actually be in this room right now.
Oh man, did you see Bo is Afraid?
Bo is Afraid? No.
That's the new Ari Aster.
That's the new Ari Aster movie. Yeah.
Have you watched it?
I have. It was really good.
Oh, okay, so it's good, because we hear mixed things.
Sure, I get it.
Yeah.
It's very Charlie Kaufman.
Okay, we could do okay, I'm pitching this. We need to do a
Let's do it
different
when
show
we just
where
watch.
we watch movies
Yeah.
and talk about them, because we need
Yeah.
to do Tar. I would love to do Bo is Afraid. That's amazing. Okay. Okay, one last question. This is Angel's question.
Yeah.
If you were booked for something at Oasis, do you have like an Oasis number that you've been itching to do?
Yes and no. I have like lots of things that are like, I have lots of plates that have been spinning. Some have been spinning since I started drag. Some have get freshly spun up for new things. Of course, in the moment, nothing comes to mind.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I have a whole bunch of things that I've like.
I think the last
on for a while.
new number I saw you do was like you had a bunch of like finger traps that you would.
Oh, that was a funny one. That was a funny one.
Yeah.
I'm doing a new number for Oaklash.
Oh yeah!
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations
Yeah.
for getting booked for Oaklash. I wonder who
you.
chose you.
Thanks, Phoebe.
Oh, my pleasure. Actually, thank you for agreeing to do Oaklash. A lot of the people I chose have since rejected their booking,
Ooh.
probably because flying and finding a place to stay.
Well, I'll catch a flight from Mexico to Oakland, and
Take the ferry. It's beautiful. You could.
Oh, well, I'll be
drink?
in the fairyland, so
Yeah,
doing
you'll
the
be in
Fairyland show. Yeah.
Nice.
And yeah, yes, I do drink.
Okay, yeah, you could drink on the ferry. That's my favorite thing about the ferry. Although the line's always very long, so by the time you get a drink, you're already at your destination.
A long
You
line
have
has
to-
never stopped me.
You have to drive to Vallejo and then take the ferry from there.
Oh, because it's longer.
And because Sally Limon is there, so you can.
Oh, ew.
I'll drive.
Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in to in my crumble opinion this week, I do have some patrons to shout out. I have Bella, Butter Mamone Cakes, Chris Hendricks, Kai Kai B. Michaels, and Terrible. We did lose a patron. I'm not gonna call them by name, but it is a thing that happens.
Bring them on as the next guest.
Yeah, it's like I as soon as I subscribe to someone on OnlyFans, I immediately unsubscribe so I don't accidentally pay for another month.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I get it. You want like you want that 1 month.
I just want to peek behind.
But like my content's not stale. I promise you. If you're a patron, we're gonna do really fun, cool stuff. That Angel.
What are we
planned. What are we doing for our?
Just loosen up your collars and
we're gonna do the Voldemort.
We're gonna turn the lights low.
We'll figure that out off camera. Okay, you have to subscribe to Patreon to find out. We'll do little teasers of it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This was so much
thank
fun.
you for the meditation.
Yeah.
I really do feel much lighter.
Not my laptop.
Just pose for the camera.
Oh yeah. In my crumble opinion. Excuse me, I have like a pickle chip in my mouth.
Come on, these pickle chips.
That's going on. That's the Patreon.
That's the Patreon episode.
Is CPR on
yeah.
Phoebe?